We are back in studio here on Steelers Talk, and today I've got my winners and losers from the first 4 practices there in Latrobe at Steelers training camp. I got 15 winners and 10 losers to discuss on today's show. So before we get into the content today, I would greatly appreciate if you guys click that subscribe button and join the fastest growing Steelers YouTube channel anywhere on this platform. Right now, we are way in the lead in our July sub-battle with our fellow AFC North channels here at Chat Sports, our Browns channel, our Ravens channel, and of course our Bengals channel. In fact, we're about to lap the entire group, all right? We added over 1,000 new subscribers already during the month of July, and those other 3 channels combined just have about 30 more than us right now. So I would love to lap the field right now and show the rest of these AFC North channels who's boss at this company. So new viewers, we are counting on you guys. If you haven't clicked that subscribe button yet, I would greatly appreciate it if you click that subscribe button for daily updates on the Pittsburgh Steelers all throughout the 2025 NFL season. Now, a little bit of a disclaimer here before we get into my list today. It is still early in camp. No pads have gone on yet, so these lists are not a finished product by any means. We still have a lot of preseason games to go. We still have a lot of practices in Latrobe, still 2 more weeks there. So, with the pads coming on this week, I just want to throw that out there. But first, let's start with the winners, because I think there was a lot of good but positive takeaways to take away from these 4 practices in Latrobe. First, we'll go with the quarterback, Will Howard, the rookie out of Ohio State. I thought had a really clean week. I think that he's done a really good job operating the offense, and I think that he's done a really good job, finding the receiver that he needs to find in his progression. He's thrown some nice balls in the intermediate level of the field with anticipation. He's thrown with good accuracy, and he has really become a fan favorite, and for a reason. He's such a likable kid. He works hard, and he seems like somebody that is really taking well to NFL life coming out of college. And I think that the setup that you have here in Pittsburgh with him, with being able to learn from an all-time great from Aaron Rodgers, that's absolutely fantastic. Now, Will hasn't been super flashy or anything. It's not like he's ripping the seam balls or he's throwing crazy deep balls down the sideline or anything like that, but he's been very clean. He's been efficient with that third-team offense, and that's exactly where you want to see him at this point in his NFL journey, where he's essentially going on a redshirt freshman season here. So you want to see him build that foundation, and I think he's done a good job of that to this point. Just a heads up here, guys, Aaron Rodgers will not be either on my winners or losers list today. I thought he had a decent week, but he still has some things to clean up, so he's not a loser in my opinion, but he's certainly not a winner either. Hopefully he can make my winners list next week during this round of padded practices. But then we move on to the running backs here, and we'll start with Kaleb Johnson, another rookie here out of the Big Ten, out of the Iowa Hawkeyes. And Kaleb, his speed is on full display, guys. He is somebody that he just runs away from people at 230 pounds. He kind of had a quieter, last 2 days of practices, but the first 2 days, man, he was breaking off long runs. You can see the acceleration and build-up speed that he brings to the table. I think he's going to be really good right away in this league, guys, and I'm really excited to see how these running backs do when the pads go on Tuesday. Another running back / wide receiver, the versatile Kenneth Gainwell, had a really good week of practices where he's lining up at receiver. They're using him in pre-snap motions, but he's also in the backfield quite a bit as well, and I thought that he was one of the more consistently good running backs during practices this week. I thought he had a really good week. He was really good in the receiving game as an outlet option for Aaron Rodgers. He broke off a couple of first down pass receptions as well, so really liking what I'm seeing from Gainwell, and it's definitely clear Arthur Smith sees him as a versatile chess piece on offense that I think you're going to see on offense more than you might think. Then we get to the receiver core here. I thought Scotty Miller had a really good week. He got open, more consistently than a lot of the other receivers out there. Now, obviously, he's working against the second team unit and sometimes in the third team unit, but he's been consistently getting open. He's had some touchdowns in the 7 shots units as well in those team periods, so it's nice to see Scotty do some good things out there in Latrobe. Another receiver that I thought had a good week was Roc Taylor, the UDFA out of Memphis, specifically yesterday, guys. Sunday's practice, Taylor had multiple intermediate dig receptions where it's like 10, 15 yards down the field. He is bringing that thing in. Will Howard and Mason Rudolph are both finding him. and he's going to be somebody to watch in the preseason for sure, especially with the wide receiver room being a little shaky as it is. I think Roc Taylor has a chance to really make an impression, and I think he did that yesterday during Sunday's practice. Then we get to Darnell Washington, the tight end. Mount Washington has really looked good in practices to this point. He's become one of Aaron Rodgers' favorite targets, especially during 7 shots, where he's caught a couple touchdowns there. And he's out there making plays, man. Like, they're using him as an outlet on play-action bootlegs and stuff like that as well. I definitely think DW is going to have a good year this year, and he looks as good as he ever has in a Pittsburgh Steelers uniform heading into year 3. Another tight end that's been turning some heads here is UDFA out of South Dakota, J.J. Galbreath, who has been a real safety blanket for Will Howard. Part of the reason why Howard looks so comfortable out there is because he knows he's got Galbraith as his safety option and as his outlet there, and he has had like 3 to 4 catches from Will Howard pretty much every single day of practice. He's caught multiple touchdowns during 7 shots from Will Howard, who, by the way, I think is 3 for 3 during 7 shots this year in his 3 reps during 7 shots. So Galbraith is definitely somebody to keep your eye on during the preseason as well. And then also Pat Freiermuth had a really good week. Out of all the receiving weapons that Aaron Rodgers threw to at the first team, I would say probably Muth and DK Metcalf probably have the best connection with him at this point. Had a number of receptions from Raji yesterday, and you can tell that relationship is starting to blossom, which is a very good thing if you are a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. Now we move over to the defensive side of the ball, where rookie Derrick Harmon has been really, really good in these first 4 practices as well. Now, listen, man, I usually don't put a ton of defensive and offensive linemen on these lists, because it is early in camp and you don't put the pads on yet. And as Mike Tomlin says, the game of the trenches is won with pads, right? So we don't really know how these guys are going to do for sure until the pads go on. But with the pads off, Derrick Harmon was super disruptive out there. Multiple TFLs, multiple pressures. He's doing a really good job batting down passes as well. Like, he was super, super impressive in this first week of practices, and I'm super excited to see what he's going to do once the pads go on tomorrow. Then we get to the new addition in the safety room, Chuck Clark, who seems to have made a good impression on the Steelers coaching staff in his first week here in Pittsburgh, where he played with the second team unit as a free safety. Actually, he's known more as kind of like a box safety, strong safety, but he's played a lot of free safety in his NFL career, and he has made some plays on the football. He has had a couple of pass breakups on Mason Rudolph deep shots with the second team unit in practice this week already, and it seems like Mike Tomlin is very impressed with his football character, which is one of the reasons why they decided to bring him in the first place. So I would say Clark is one of the winners of this week. Another safety that I thought had a really good week was Juan Thornhill. He had 2 PBUs, one in each of the last 2 practices. He's been doing a good job keeping the top on the defense. Aaron Rodgers in that first team offense hasn't been really airing the ball out down the field, because I think Juan Thornhill is doing a really good job keeping that lid on top of the defense. And he's looking good out there in coverage, man. He made a really, really impressive PBU where he was chasing Calvin Austin III and then got his hand on a crossing route there. And then he had another PBU in the end zone during 7 shots yesterday. So Juan Thornhill is coming in here with a lot of confidence. I love his moxie, and I think that he's doing a really good job to this point as this team's starting free safety. Another guy in the safety room or cornerback room, whatever you want to call him, he's the defensive chess piece for this Steelers defense this year, and that is Jalen Ramsey. And Ramsey looks every single bit worth the price of what the Steelers had to give up to get him, which of course was Minkah Fitzpatrick, a team leader, a great player, all that stuff. But Ramsey is being moved all around the formation, everywhere from outside corner, where he's still looking like a really good outside guy when you want him to do that, but he's also playing safety a little bit. He's looking good in that role, and then he's really making a home at nickel corner, and he's blitzing a lot, which is something that we have been talking about a lot on this channel. This team loved to blitz Mike Hilton from the slot when he was still here. Ramsey He's bigger, he's more physical, he's a better tackler, and he's better in coverage than Mike Hilton ever was. So we all know how good those Steelers defenses were with Hilton as kind of that defensive chess piece. I think this defense is going to be even better this year with Jalen Ramsey in that role. Another corner that I thought had a really good week was Joey Porter Jr. Shutting down DK Metcalf is no easy feat, but he has done that for the most part through these first few days of practice. And Joey Porter Jr., in my opinion, looks as good as he ever has has as a Pittsburgh Steeler. He's not grabbing. He's just really doing a good job sticking with people down the field, and there really hasn't been a whole lot of opportunities for Rodgers to throw the ball down the field with whoever Joey Porter Jr. is covering in coverage, whether that's Roman Wilson, whether that's DK Metcalf, whether that's Calvin Austin III. Joey Porter Jr. is doing an excellent job so far in camp, and it looks like he could have a breakout season this year to me. And then another corner that, is a very nice piece to have in this defense. And we know that this team has had some issues keeping cornerbacks healthy, and Brandon Echols was brought in this year to be kind of a nice backup cornerback option for them, and I think that's exactly the role that he is going to play, man. He looks like a premium backup corner out there. When Darius Slay had his veteran day off on the third day of practice, Echols came in as a first-team player, playing on the outside and in the slot, and he looked really good in that role. Really didn't give up a whole lot in coverage, and then he had another interception. He had an interception in 7 shots yesterday on Mason Rudolph, so he is looking really, really good out there, guys. If one of these starting corners go down, I feel confident Brandon Echols will be able to hold down the fort in this defense. Then the final winner on my list here is Dante Kent, rookie out of Central Michigan. Dante is playing with the third and sometimes the second team unit, but he has looked really good. He had an interception on Skylar Thompson this week. I'm really a big fan of Kent's game, and I'm going to be watching him closely during these preseason games. He should get a lot of run, and I'm really interested to see if he could potentially make the final roster here over maybe somebody like Beanie Bishop Jr. So up next here on Steelers Talk, we are on to the losers. We got some very interesting names to talk about here and some guys I have some early concerns about. But before we get into the losers here, let me know down there in the comment section for today's pin question, who are the biggest winners of the first week of Steelers training camp? Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. In just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Ethos, our new sponsor here. But when I'm doing that, go down there in the comment section and let me know who the biggest winner was of week 1 of Steelers training camp. All right, so now let's talk a little bit here about our sponsor today at Ethos. It is a new sponsor here on Steelers Talk. And guys, the summer before I started here at Chat Sports, my family lost my late grandfather. And as you tend to do when you lose a loved one, you begin to think about your own mortality and what would happen to the people dependent on you if something were to happen. With today's sponsor, Ethos, your family is protected. Cassie and I are getting married soon, and shortly after that, I imagine we'll buy a house and start having kids. If something were to happen to me, I want the last thing the people I love to worry about is being able to pay the bills, so I trust Ethos to keep them protected. Ethos is an online program that makes getting life insurance fast and easy to protect your family's future in minutes, not months. There is no complicated process, and it's 100% online. There's no medical exam required, and you just answer a few health questions to get a quote in as little as 10 minutes. Protect your family with life insurance from Ethos today. Get your free quote at ethos.com/NFL Daily. That's ethos.com/NFL Daily to get your free quote today. A big shout out to our new sponsor, Ethos, for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So now on to the losers here, and if you're not practicing, it's hard to be a winner, right? So Isaac Seumalo has a day-to-day injury, has not practiced to this point. We'll see when he can get back out there. But honestly, if he's going to miss practices, I'd want him to miss the non-padded practices early on in camp. So hopefully we can get Seumalo back. It doesn't sound like it's too serious of an injury, but the fact that he wasn't out there makes him a loser this week. Then DJ Thomas-Jones, a more significant injury. It appears he has torn his Achilles, which would take him out for the rest of the season. That's really, that's really a bummer. DJ was somebody that was turning some heads. He was making some nice catches in yesterday's practice before the injury. He's very physical blocker, and I was excited to see what he looked like on film in the preseason, but his season is unfortunately over. Then you go to Broderick Jones, who also got injured yesterday with a lower body injury. It's described as a soft tissue injury, and we'll see if he can get back out there for pads tomorrow, but he didn't practice much yesterday, and I am officially worried about Broderick Jones because injury aside, all right, like he's getting off at the snap really slowly. He's taking some really bad losses, and I know no pads have been put on yet, and you can't really judge these guys until the pads go on. But if this is an injury like that elbow issue last year that lingers and it kind of hinders his ability to develop as an offensive lineman, we could be looking at a really big hole on the Steelers' offensive line here if Broderick Jones isn't healthy, and or B, it just isn't very good this year. So this is certainly a concern for me right now, guys, but let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. What is your concern level for Broderick Jones at this point in his NFL career? Put it on a scale of 1, meaning not worried at all, he's going to be just fine, to 10 being I am panicking, we need to get a new left tackle in here right now. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Now this one might not be the most popular one, but I think it's true that Zach Frazier has disappointed to start Steelers camp this year. Now, Frazier had an excellent rookie season. I am on record saying going into the year I think he might be a top 5 center in all of football, but he has fallen short of that standard through the first 4 practices. And obviously, pads have not gone on, and I think Frazier's game is one with pads, but he's had at least one bad snap in all 4 of the Steelers practices to this point. And, people want to make excuses like, it's raining out there and, the ground is wet, but it's like, that's AFC North ball, man, and you can't make those mistakes. And not every team's starting center is botching a snap every single practice. So that is an issue, and it has been an issue for Frazier. It was a little bit of an issue last year when Justin Fields was in there. You guys will remember that, a couple of botched snaps happened early on in the season. And Justin Fields took a lot of the heat for that, but now it's multiple quarterbacks with Zach Frazier where he's had an issue with this. He's also taken some bad losses in the run game where he's allowed guys like Dean Lowry and Logan Lee and Derrick Harmon to get through for easy TFLs in the run game. So hopefully he can get better when the pads go on, but he has been a little bit disappointing to this point. Just to round out here, the losers, Skylar Thompson, a quarterback, interceptions, inaccurate passes. Will Howard, in my opinion, has looked better to this point in training camp practices. So Skylar, I think, has been a loser to this point. I think he's already been demoted to the 4th-team quarterback. Then you get Jalen Warren, who had a little bit of a quiet week. Now, I think that, like offensive linemen, you don't really know how running backs are doing until the pads go on. Of course, Warren is known for his backs on backers, run blocking technique and all that stuff. So I'm not particularly worried about Jalen Warren, but I will say, he was fairly quiet this week, and for somebody that really does pride himself on his pass catching ability and his ability to make guys miss in space, he really wasn't doing a whole lot of that in the passing game as a receiver in this really pass-heavy start to Steelers training camp this year. So we'll see how he does once the pads go on. I'm not particularly worried about him, but just a little bit of a quiet week for Jalen Warren. And then we get to some receivers here. Calvin Austin III. I think Calvin is a good player, and I think that he's extremely underrated. You guys know how I feel about him, but he did have a little bit of a quiet week. He did catch Aaron Rodgers' lone intermediate reception of camp through the first 4 days of practice with a corner route that was really well run. He toasted Joey Porter Jr. on that one. And he hasn't necessarily been bad. He has been making more catches than, say, Roman Wilson, who we're going to talk about here in just a second. But his hands have been spotty. He's dropped a couple of passes. And I think I want to see more consistency out of him here in week 2. Then Roman Wilson is another guy, another starting receiver here that unfortunately makes the losers list because he had an even more quiet week than Calvin Austin III. Where they're playing him a lot on the outside, and I'm not sure if that's exactly where I would want to be playing Roman Wilson. I think he's much better in the slot, and Calvin's actually better on the outside. But to start camp here, the Steelers have put Calvin more in the slot and Roman more on the outside, and physical corners like Joey Porter Jr. just completely, eat kind of smaller, less physically strong wide receivers like Roman Wilson for breakfast. But Roman is somebody that I'm really rooting for because he's like the first one out to practice every single day. He stays late on the jugs machine. You can tell he cares about it, but you can also tell his connection with Aaron Rodgers isn't all the way there. You can tell there's been some miscommunications between Rodgers and Roman. Rodgers has a history of not playing particularly well with young wide receivers. So I'm really rooting for Roman, but it hasn't been the greatest start to camp for him. Then we get to another receiver, Robert Woods. And with Calvin and Roman kind of having quieter kind of starts to camp, that gave Robert Woods a chance to really establish himself as maybe even this team's number 2 receiver. And that just hasn't happened. And, he hasn't really had a whole lot of big-time splash plays. He's had a couple of receptions, but really not that many. So I wouldn't be surprised at this point, guys, that the Pittsburgh Steelers end up making a move at wide receiver. Mike Tomlin said this was a big camp for Roman Wilson to show what he can do. And honestly, to this point, he hasn't shown much. So he needs to get going and fast if he doesn't want to get replaced in this offense before the start of the season. So predict it for me down there in the comments section. Will the Pittsburgh Steelers make a move at wide receiver before the season starts? Give me a yes or a no down there in the comment section. We'll finish up today's losers list with Sebastian Castro, the UDFA out of Iowa. Now, I want to make clear, I didn't think Castro had a bad week. It's not like he was getting torched or anything like that, but I think, he makes this losers list for two reasons. Number one, he did have a little bit of a quiet week. For somebody that's UDFA trying to make the roster, you got to make some splash plays out there. You got to, prove your worth to the Steelers organization here. I didn't think he made too many of those plays this week. And then also with Chuck Clark coming in and making plays on the football, showing some veteran leadership and savvy, like Mike Tomlin, specifically calling out Chuck Clark for a good week this week. Sebastian's trying to fight for a roster spot here, so Clark's addition doesn't help his chances in that regard. All right, that'll be it for today's show, guys. Really do appreciate your guys' support. Today at 5 p.m. Eastern, we are back on Steelers Talk Live. We've got another Steelers Madden simulation on that one. We're going to be talking more about Aaron Rodgers and training camp and my takeaways and some potential options on the free agency and trade markets for the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point in training camp. So make sure you guys click that subscribe button if you haven't already. I really do appreciate all of your guys' support. I will see you guys later today. And until then, guys, here we go, Steelers.